Good morning everyone. In this video, I'm going to report about the ecology of public administration. Ecology. Ecology, it is a study's interaction between individual organisms and their environment, including interaction with both conspecifics and members of other species. Public administration. Public administration is the implementation of government policy and also an academic discipline that studies this implementation and prepares civil employees for working in a public service. Also, public administration, the implementation of government policies. Today, public administration is often regarded as including also some responsibility for determining the policies and programs of governments. Specifically, it is the planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, and controlling of government operation. Ecology of public administration. Many scientists would agree that public administration as an organization is influenced by its environment, its ecological factors condition, its organizational behavior as they continuously interact with it. This is to say that administrative activities of an organization face a changing pattern due to the environmental constraints which come across its administration. Eugene Rousseau says that society is not static, it is dynamic and it keeps on changing. The Philippines is a developing country. It is changing society. It exists in a pragmatic, result-oriented environment. So as it changes, the ecology of public administration also changes. As its ecology changes, public administration must concede such developments by penetrating angles within the wheel cars necessarily generate changes in the government. The government is supposed to represent the people links in the name of the people. It exists to meet the changing requirements of its people, particularly in the delivery of governmental services. Now, Dalton E. Marland explained about what is ecology. According to him, ecology is a concept borrowed from the field of biology, in which the term refers to the study of organism in relation to its environment. The analogy between biological ecology and management ecology is, however, imperfect. The reason is that in contrast to biological organism, human organizations show a greater propensity to change and modify their environment, instead of adapting to them or being subject to them. Therefore, the individual and his organizational environment are in conflict state of interaction with each other, and the organization itself is in a state of interaction with its environment. Now, ecology of public administration refers to two things. First is the interaction of the organisms of public administration in their environment, and second, the interaction of the administrator with the organization itself. Now, to distinguish the two types of environment, the organizational environment will be called the external environment, while the individual environment will be known as internal environment. With this arrangement, external environment refers to everything outside the organizational structure of public administration, while internal environment refers to the relationship of the administrator with his organization. First, the administrator's attitude on environment. Importance of the task of the administrator. The environment helps to determine the alternatives on the basis of which business decisions are made. and also affects the value system, which supplies the criteria for choosing among these alternatives. Alright, this is according to Robert A. Gordon and James E. Howell. Now, what is specifically significant about the L suggestion was explained by McFarland. According to McFarland, clearly the executive and his organization may both benefit from the experienced difficulties with their relationship to the environment. Among the practical benefits of the environment is the way it challenges and stimulates the individual. Earlier, Arnold G. Toynbee made an observation that the civilization that survived since the dawn of recorded history were those that faced and met strongly the challenges of their environment. Accordingly, the dynamic forces that shape their survival begin with the attitude of their administrators. Of course, the perception of an individual depends primarily on what one sees. What one sees, however, depends on what one would like to see. What one perceives is a function of both his past experiences and his immediate environment. To some extent, the specific content of these experiences and environments are determined by one culture, but the underlying processes or major contributing factors are the same. This is according to William G. Scott and Terence R. Mitchell. They argue further that the individual cannot be understood apart from his environment. In fact, the person-environment forms a syndrome, two or more mutually dependent interacting parts, creating a fairly stable structure of relationship which possesses an inherent potential of predictability as long as one is sufficiently sensitized to it. Now, McFarland says, perception of the environment and the meanings within it are thus an important element of management action. Indeed, many managerial actions take the form of influencing or even creating aspects of the environment. At this point, it should be borne in mind, as McFarland says, it is part of the executive responsibility to be alert to forces in the external environment that affects the organization and its goals. Organizations developed adaptive mechanisms and structural devices. The second is ecology and administrative service. An organization must be designed in full recognition of the rapid changes in its environment. Certainly, which developments affect the way the organization performs assigned tasks. As a result, the organizational values and traditions are subjected to pressures of change. More than ever, to be effective, the organization must permit itself to perform a kind of balancing its ethos and that of its environment. Only in this way could it be expected to meet the challenges of the fast-changing world. Now, constantly adjusting to its environment. McFarland says the organization constitutes the manager's immediate environment. Therefore, organizational variables are important determinants of the manager's behavior. But there is also the environment of the enterprise itself. That is, the organization exists in a political, economic, social, and technical environment of which it is an integral part and to which it must relate. The importance of environment. McFarland reported that we found that the external environment is important because it contains influences that shape the behavior of those inside the company. The main way this occurs is through information coming into the organization from outside that helps it shape its goals. According to his perception of the signals and his interpretation of their meanings, the executive task environment emerge. The factors of environmental constraint. As earlier stated, there is no other way where the administrator could escape from the influences of the external environment forces of his organization, except for his organization to control it. The organization external environmental factors, and he classified as follows: educational, legal, political, socio-cultural, economic, and religious. However, for purposes of this book, this will be called constraints, for they are factors to be over by the administrator in attaining the goal of the organization. Now, these are the external environment factor or constraint. First, educational constraint. Second, legal political constraint. Third, social cultural constraint. Fourth, economic constraint. And last, religious constraint. Now, first that we're going to tackle is the educational constraint. Advanced society is not exempt from the educational constraint of environment. This is in spite of its educational system being closely matched with its manpower requirements. As seen by Harold Kuntz and Cyril O'Donnell, there is always the phenomenon of a shortage of educational brain power. They claim that the characteristic of a society, the presence of literacy level, the availability of specialized vocational training, higher education, and management development program could lessen its educational motives. For this, the development of certain level of education in the country, particularly those pertaining to the development of management skills, has an important impact on the pace of economic progress. The organization is capable fact. This problem is not only limited to the intervention organization's external forces, but also on the country's total national socio-economic development program. Now, Arsenio P. Taligdan says that technical skills implies an understanding of a proficiency in a specific kind of undertaking, and of the oft activity, particularly those involving methods, approaches, processes, or techniques in dealing with education as an external constraint. Thus, an administrator must necessarily endeavor to acquire the required technical skill of management for the particular undertaking for which he is responsible. Taligdan also suggests that the conceptual skill of an administrator should be developed. It involves the ability to see and integrate the interrelationship of any various factors in that organization. Now, second is legal political constraint. Most organizations, if not all, are governed by laws that are extremely complicated. These laws usually apply to personnel administration. While these laws were designed to guide the administrator in the management of the organization, in some instances, they hamper the attainment of the administrative efficiency. Administration is not only based on laws, but also in human relations. It requires, therefore, knowledge about people to make legality practicable. Now, Albert K. Wickesburg says the tasks and duties required of define if it to survive and remain successful are continuity and flux in response to the changing needs and of the external environment, the interests and personalities within the firm, and the goals as these are formulated and reformulated of the firm. The result is an ever-changing, continually adjusting set of personal relationships. Thus, Wickesburg concludes that external as well as internal environment factors thus play a role in determining the nature, extent, and effectiveness of the individual's actual authority. The third is socio-cultural constraints. Richard A. Johnson, Fremont E. Cast, and James E. Rosenzweig, organization can be thought of as a subsystem of the broader socio-cultural environment in which it operates. As suggested by the three American authors, public administration can be considered as a subsystem of society. Every society has its own culture. In that manner, public administration shares in that culture. Now, broadly speaking, we are recognizing that man is just a subsystem of the universe, and that his action may have significant adverse implication for his environment, other living organism, and all of mankind. This is according to the three American author, which is Johnson, Cast, and Rosenzweig. Now, as pointed by the three American author, every organization has a psychosocial system which consists of individual behavior and motivation, status and role relationship, group dynamics, and influence systems. Obviously, the psychosocial system is affected by external environmental forces as well as by the task, technology, and structure of the internal organization. In short, the organization has its own culture. This culture must be fully known and understood by the administrator. R.N. Farmer and B.M. Richman identify a large number of factors that pronounce the behavior as well as the tie of relationship between the administrator and subordinates. These factors are as follows. First, the general attitude of the society towards managers. Second, the dominant views of authority and subordinates. Third, the extent to which cooperation between various groups is a way of life. Fourth, the view of achievement. Fifth, the extent of inflexible class structure and individual class structure and individual mobility. Sixth, the view of scientific method. Seventh, the view of risk. And eighth, the view of change. Economic constraint. Economic stability is a significant economic variable. It is accepted by many that money is the lifeblood of any organization. By that alone, it is clear that it is an important economic environmental factor in preparing the development plans of the organization. The administrator is required to commit by necessity not only the financial resources of the organization but also its other resources. Here, he is forced to be guided only by the limited data on the economic condition of his environments. Utilization of production factors, as Cons and O'Donnell point out, it is also an economic environmental matter of great significance. He should therefore consider production factors as factor endowment, the extent to which a country has available natural resources, adequate and useful labor, capital which can be employed for efficient production, or the extent to which social overhead capital is available. That is the supply and quality of public utility type services. Now, last is the religious constraint. Religion can be considered as one of the constraints or outside forces that creates a problem to the effectiveness of public administration. Certainly, there are differences among the various religious denominations existing in the countries today. Members of this religious organization are sometimes fanatical of their adherence to their faiths and beliefs. As Yap explained, that the attitude and outlook of the people are bound to be influenced by their religious perception of what is right and wrong. Their relationship with others are influenced by what may be considered to the correct conduct to follow. According to Section 6, Article 3, entitled Bill of Rights, no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion, of prohibiting the free exercise thereof, the free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference, shall forever be allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil or political rights. This is the summary of Ecology of Public Administration. Public administration as an organization is influenced by its environment. Its ecological factors, in some degrees, condition its organizational behavior. Society, of which public administration is an integral part, has been in constant change. The Philippines, as a developing country, it is a changing society. Whether the ecology of public administration will be an asset or a liability of the organization depends primarily on the attitude of the administrator towards it. However, his attitude will be governed to some extent by his perception of that particular situation. Also, organizational forms and technology revolutionize the environment of organization. Besides, many environmental factors influence management decisions. In fact, public administration must reflect the culture and values of its environment. Thus, it calls for the constant adjustment of its organizational goals and administrative structure with that of its environment. While an administrator is influenced by the external environmental forces of his organization, the organization is capable of controlling them. These external factors can be classified as educational, legal, political, socio-cultural, economic, and religious constraints. So that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something, and goodbye.